The girl who found Ava wasn't much older than Ava had been. Maybe 16, maybe younger. Her name was Clara, and she had just moved into the old Victorian home with her parents who'd inherited it from a distant aunt. They hadn't even finished unpacking when Clara wandered into the attic, claiming she heard laughter coming from above. Her mother, distracted by boxes and furniture placement, gave only a distracted nod. So Clara climbed the creaky stairs, feeling the age of the house in every step. The attic had changed. It looked newer, cleaner, but still eerily silent. When she opened the old chest, there sat the doll. Ava, eyes wide, hands folded, head tilted slightly as if listening. Clara gasped. "You're beautiful," she whispered, lifting the doll gently. Inside, Ava screamed. Her mind, trapped behind painted eyes, begged the girl to run, to drop her, to leave. But no one could hear Ava now. She had no voice. Her thoughts were silent echoes in a prison of porcelain. Clara brought the doll to her bedroom and placed her gently on the windowsill. "You're my new favorite," she said. Ava watched helplessly as days passed. Clara laughed with her friends, talked to her parents, painted the doll's lips a new shade. The house was warm, alive, but shadows still moved in the corners. Whispers still drifted through the air at night. Ava could hear Eleanor still whispering, still watching. Ava thought she would simply be stuck, silent, unmoving, an observer for eternity. But then the dream started. Clara's dreams, and Ava was inside them. The first time it happened, Ava stood in a forest. The trees were blackened, the sky blood red. Clara ran barefoot along a path that vanished behind her. From behind the trees came laughter. Childlike, cold, cruel. Eleanor's laughter. Ava moved toward Clara, wanting to protect her, warn her, but Clara ran straight through her, unaware. She woke up, back on the shelf, unmoved, but she had seen inside Clara's mind, and that meant the bond was beginning. Clara began drawing. Pages filled with sketches of a little girl with hollow eyes. Her parents brushed it off as teenage imagination. But Ava recognized the figure instantly, Eleanor. Each sketch made Eleanor more real, more present. And every time Clara dreamed, the space inside the dream got clearer, more detailed, more like the house itself. Eleanor wasn't done with Ava. She was using her. That night, Clara woke up screaming. She said the doll had moved. Her father laughed it off, joking that it was probably the cat. But Clara didn't believe him. She stared at Ava with something new in her eyes. Fear. Ava focused. She willed her mind forward. She pushed every ounce of thought toward the surface. And for just a flicker of a second, her finger twitched. Clara saw it. She dropped the doll and backed away slowly. Ava fell to the floor, her face cracking slightly. And for the first time, she felt it, pain. Clara hesitated, then picked her back up. She wrapped her in a blanket and placed her in the closet. "You can stay there tonight," she whispered. Ava sat in darkness again, but the connection had started. She could feel it, and she wasn't the only one. Eleanor was angry. The house began to change, windows fogged without reason. Paintings fell off the walls. Lights flickered during the day. Clara's parents began to argue. Her mother, who had always been calm, suddenly became paranoid. Her father started drinking again. One night, Clara opened the closet and whispered, "Are you haunted?" Ava screamed yes in her mind. The next day, Clara brought her to the library in town. She began researching the house, the history, the family. She found the same name Ava had once found, Eleanor Blythe. She found the fire, the missing children, the other owners who'd gone insane or vanished. And she found an old article that mentioned something chilling, asterisk asterisk. The Blythe doll was never meant to be played with. It was a lock, not a toy. That night, Clara tried to burn it. Ava felt the flames lick her skin. For the first time, the fire caught. But it didn't destroy her. It revealed something. The porcelain cracked. And Ava saw her reflection in a broken shard. She no longer looked like herself. Her eyes were Eleanor's. And she screamed. Eleanor had been chipping away at her. Not to trap her, but to replace her. The next night, Clara had another nightmare. She stood at the top of the stairs, holding the doll. The house burned around her. Voices screamed from the walls. And behind her stood Ava. Not as a doll, but in full form, reaching out. "Don't let her in," Ava begged. "Who?" Clara asked. Then Eleanor's voice whispered, "Me," and Clara fell. She woke up with bruises she couldn't explain. Her mother screamed when she saw the handprint on her shoulder. small, child-sized, burned into her skin. Ava knew time was running out. Eleanor was close to escaping. She was using Ava's body like a suit, turning her soul into an empty shell. And once she fully took over, she'd have Clara next, so Ava did the only thing she could. She reached out in the dream. "Clara," she whispered one last time. "You must bury me under the stone marked Blythe. It's the only way." Clara didn't answer. She simply stared. Then the attic door creaked open. Something walked down. Not Clara. Something smaller, smiling. The doll was gone from the shelf that it walked now. Porcelain feet tapping softly on the wooden floor. Ava was inside, screaming, but Eleanor had already taken her place. She had found her next voice, and Clara, frozen in place, watched the doll tilt its head and whisper, "Play with me." When Ava found the doll, it was tucked away in a dusty old chest buried deep in the attic of her grandmother's Victorian home. The house had stood for more than a century, filled with the creaks and sighs of aging wood, each sound like a whisper from the past. Ava had always been drawn to the strange, the forgotten, the things people didn't talk about. She was visiting for the summer, and her grandmother, an eccentric woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, had warned her to stay out of the attic. But warnings only deepened Ava's curiosity. She waited until the second week, when her grandmother went to the market, before creeping up the narrow staircase. The attic was filled with cobwebs, old paintings with smeared faces, broken furniture, and boxes labeled in fading ink. But it was the chest in the far corner, chained, locked, and covered with an old moth-eaten blanket, that caught her attention. The lock was rusted, but a few solid hits with a nearby hammer cracked it open. Inside was a single porcelain doll wrapped in a lace cloth that had yellowed with time. The doll was stunning in an eerie way. Its glass eyes were a piercing blue, too vivid to be real, and its lips were painted into a faint smile that didn't feel friendly. The dress it wore was Victorian style, frilly and delicate, but stained with something that might have been time, or something worse. Ava, against all better instincts, took the doll downstairs. Her grandmother returned that afternoon and stopped dead when she saw it sitting on the hallway table. "Where did you get that?" she asked sharply, her voice cracking with fear. Ava shrugged, suddenly uneasy. "From the attic. It was in a chest." Her grandmother's eyes clouded with something Ava couldn't name. Grief, maybe, or dread. She snatched the doll off the table and stormed outside, throwing it into the trash bin with trembling hands. She said nothing more that evening, just lit candles around the house and murmured prayers under her breath. That night, Ava dreamed of footsteps outside her door. She woke to the sound of soft tapping and sat upright in bed, heart racing. There was nothing there. The next morning, the doll was back on the table. Her grandmother refused to speak. She locked herself in her room and did not come out even when Ava knocked. So Ava took the doll again, this time keeping it in her room, partly out of curiosity, partly to prove it wasn't cursed. But things began to change almost immediately. The mirror in her room fogged up on its own. Scratches appeared on the floorboards. She would place the doll on the shelf, only to find it on her bed, or facing the window, or sitting beside the door. Once, she found it inside her closet, standing up on its own. She tried to dismiss it as sleepwalking or forgetfulness, but deep down she knew better. To be why the third night, she started hearing the voice. It was faint at first, a childlike whisper at the edge of sleep. "Ava, play with me." She woke up in a cold sweat, the doll lying beside her pillow, one glass eye cracked. The next day, her grandmother was gone. Ava searched the entire house, but there was no sign of the old woman. Her phone sat on the counter, dead. The front door was unlocked. The car was still in the driveway, but she had vanished. Ava called the police, filed a report, but the officers seemed oddly disinterested. They chalked it up to an old woman wandering off. When Ava showed them the doll, they barely glanced at it. "Creepy thing," one muttered, then walked away. That night, Ava tried to burn the doll. She soaked it in lighter fluid and set a match. The flames danced around it but never touched it. The cloth didn't catch. The porcelain remained unblackened. It was as if fire refused to consume it. She threw it into the nearby lake, watching it sink beneath the surface. But when she returned home, dripping wet and shivering, it was already waiting on her bed. The days blurred. Ava stopped eating. Shadows stretched longer in her room. Whispers turned into voices, sometimes screaming, sometimes sobbing. The doll followed her from room to room, always turning up no matter where she tried to hide it. Her grandmother's room began to smell of rot. When she finally got the courage to open the door again, she found the walls clawed with fingernail marks and the word mine, scratched over and over again into the wallpaper. One night, Ava dreamt of a little girl in a white dress, her face hidden beneath black hair. She stood in a cemetery, whispering to the wind, clutching the doll. Behind her was a gravestone with a name Ava didn't recognize. Eleanor Blythe. She woke up screaming, the doll sitting on her chest. She researched the name. Eleanor Blythe had lived in that very house in 1902. She was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. The story said she had died at age 7 in a fire that consumed the nursery, but the fire was never explained. People claimed to hear laughter in the attic, to feel a child's cold hand brushing theirs in the hallway. The house was eventually sold for next to nothing. Ava's grandmother had bought it during the 1960s, and no one had ever asked questions. Digging through her grandmother's diaries, Ava found a single entry that chilled her to the core. The doll is not a toy. It's a vessel. Eleanor lives inside. If you feed her attention, she grows stronger. If you ignore her, she punishes you. I should have burned this house to the ground when I had the chance. That night, the power went out. Ava sat in candlelight, surrounded by every mirror in the house. She'd read somewhere that spirits hate mirrors. They show their true form. She placed the doll in the center of the room and waited. For hours, nothing happened. Then the flame flickered violently, and the temperature dropped. The mirrors began to fog, one by one. In them, she didn't see herself. She saw Eleanor, standing just behind her, face expressionless, doll in hand. The glass cracked, then shattered. Ava screamed and scrambled out of the room, cutting her hands on broken shards. The doll remained where it was, untouched, but from its eyes now oozed a thick, black liquid. She tried to leave the house. The front door wouldn't open. Windows wouldn't break. She was trapped. Days passed, or maybe it was weeks. Time didn't work right anymore. She stopped hearing birds. The sun no longer warmed the windows. And the doll began to change. It smiled wider. Its eyes followed her. Its arms moved on their own. And once, just once, Ava saw it blink. She stopped sleeping. Her mind frayed. She started talking to it, begging it, bargaining with it. Sometimes she'd wake up with bruises. Once with her hair cut off. She found drawings on the walls. Stick figures of a girl and a doll. Always with one other stick figure beside them. Burning point one night, she gave in. She cradled the doll in her arms like a child and whispered, "I'll play with you." The room grew silent. The wind outside died. Then she heard the front door creak open. She stepped out of her room to find the house whole again. Fresh wallpaper, clean air, light. Her grandmother stood at the bottom of the stairs, smiling. "You listened," she said. "You finally listened." Ava didn't remember walking down the steps. She didn't remember her grandmother's eyes turning black. She only remembered waking up in the attic, lying in the same chest she had once opened, unable to move, porcelain skin cracking slightly with every blink, and outside the chest, another girl's voice echoed through the attic. "Look, a doll!" The cycle had begun again. Ava tried to scream, but no sound came from her glass mouth. She could only watch as new hands lifted her into the light, wide-eyed with wonder. The curse never wanted release. It only wanted a new vessel. Ava had played. Now she belonged to Eleanor. Forever.